I watched Netflix's new Avatar: The Last Airbender series, and one of the major problems I had with it, other than the persistently awkward dialogue, was the fight scenes. Not all of the fight scenes are bad, some of them I actually like very much, but I took particular note of this one in the second to last episode because it reminded me a lot of this other fight scene in the 2005 Nickelodeon animated series called Avatar: The Last Airbender. Both scenes feature a girl fighting an old man, but I enjoyed the animated one much more than the live action one, and I couldn't really put my finger on why I felt that way, other than the animated one felt more cool and the live action one felt kind of slow, I don't know. So like any normal person, I decided to watch both of them like 50 times while taking notes, and I came up with a number of points that maybe contributed to me feeling the way I did. First, one thing I really like about the animated fight is that it really gets across the weight and scale of each move. That is, what each moment means for the characters and also the literal size of everything. To convey this, I think it's important to know the right place to use wide shots, close-up shots, quick shots, longer shots, and where to place the objects and characters in the shot. For example, we have this part where the old guy is moving the water around him, then we zoom out to show that it's actually a big circle of water, which has the girl inside of it. We see the water moving a little bit, then he gives a little taunt, and then we get closer to the girl who's looking worried as the water is moving closer to her. Quick shots of her legs as she needs to reposition herself, a final wide shot of her shooting the water off to the side, and then we cut away to the crowd where this unfortunate young man is comically hit head-on and blasted out of the frame. Compare this to this sequence of a similar move in the live action, where the old guy makes a ring of water around his opponent, prompting her to stand around for a bit before using it to make her own maneuver. Much less dramatic than the animated equivalent. This difference comes not just from what literally happens, but how each show shows what's happening. Take note of the types of shots used in the animated fight. First, we have longer, wider shots, which establish what's going on, and then we have faster, closer up shots, which show what effect this is having on the other character and communicate to us the sense of urgency that she is feeling. We see how tall the water is compared to the characters, and it literally pushes the girl out of the frame, really selling the power of it. The quick shots build the tension, and then we start to release tension with a wider shot in which the girl solves the issue she is facing. The tension is then fully released by this long shot of the crowd, but the build-up isn't wasted, as we feel the force of this impact on this guy. Also unrelated, I just noticed this kid is staring directly at the camera. Someone should tell him not to do that. This brings me to another thing that I like. The animated fight scene is really good at constantly building and releasing tension. It feels like a roller coaster. It also has this sense of push and pull. It's made of sequences of a character trying to do something, the other character's response, there's a climax, we see the aftermath, and then there's like a second of rest before the next action. But then there's also a variety in how each sequence goes so that it doesn't feel like it's just repeating a formula. It kind of feels like a real fight, I guess. I think the live action, meanwhile, actually moves a bit too fast between each segment. We don't really get much of a build-up or much of that rest, so the action just feels like a bunch of stuff happening. But I'm also moving too quick. Back to the first point. The animated series sells the scale and weight of every move with a variety of different types of shots and framing. Meanwhile, one of the first things I noticed about the live action is that it's weirdly allergic to using close-ups and especially wide shots. Most of the fight is from this same distance, and I think that's why a lot of it doesn't feel as powerful as it should. For example, this ice wind, how powerful is this really supposed to be? We have the guy blowing the wind and she's getting pushed, and then he's still blowing the wind, and then her legs get tired. I don't think we really feel the power of this. We just kind of think, oh, I guess she's falling to the ground. I guess that was a lot of wind. We need something to sell the power of this wind other than the reactions of the characters. Maybe a wider shot to show how big the gust of wind really is. Maybe the girl should just fall over faster. Or look at the animated series. A move that seems to have the same stopping power as this wind is supposed to have happens at the very start of the battle where the girl runs and then gets hit by all this water. Not only are the camera angles unique from the rest of the fight, but also everything about the movement of objects through the frame builds into the girl being forcefully stopped and makes the bending feel powerful. She runs super fast towards and then past the camera, which transitions well into the next shot as she continues the same path of motion, keeping up her momentum until she is hit directly by the water, which immediately knocks her backwards into the air. Meanwhile, the old guy is standing in the same spot a bit in the distance, but for a little bit we notice how he's building up this attack, which completely stops his opponent. It's clear that this move has power behind it. I also like this shot where the old guy stands centered in the frame with a wall of ice behind him, and as he bends lands it, it melts and folds around him, producing a wave of water much larger than him coming right at the camera. The size of the attack, along with how all of this water is rushing towards us, helps us feel more of the force behind it. It's then much more impressive when the girl is able to hold her footing and bend the massive speeding wave around her. Both of these examples show a better use of framing and movement to make the bending feel powerful. Additionally, the second example works well because a wider shot is able to show how large the attack really is. If everything was shot from closer up like how the live action is, we wouldn't get to see how much water is really at play here. This shot from the live action could definitely use something like that. The girl does a big build-up and pulls a tube of water out of this jar behind her, and the old guy looks scared for a second. This is supposed to be like a huge attack, and the next shot shows how this is a really big splash of water, but we literally can't see how much water it's supposed to be in the shot immediately before, and so to me at least, this big splash feels a lot larger than what she was actually holding behind her. I imagine this could have looked cooler with a wider shot showing the water really towering over her. That would have made the old guy's frightened look make a lot more sense, and the audience would really feel how powerful this attack is. It also doesn't help that the old guy very effortlessly deflects the big splash. The widest wide shot the live action gives us is this one, where the girl does this weird hop thing for some reason. I'm not really sure what that was supposed to do. It just feels awkward because 1, nothing happened, and 2, because a wide shot is used but the action that happens is tiny. Wide shots in the animated series were used to show big and impressive bending moves or establish the geography of the wider area, neither of which is really necessary here. The move ends up feeling random and unimpressive, but it leads into a bit of admittedly decent hand-to-hand fighting. I like this overhead shot especially, and then, oh, cutaway. And that's another thing. Cutaway reaction shots are infamous in anime fight scenes for distracting from the actual exciting stuff and just padding runtime. But I think that's just because reaction shots are often done poorly. They can be done in ways that I think are fine. In the animated fight scene we're talking about right now, there are 3 times the camera cuts away to show the crowd. First is the one we already talked about where this guy in the crowd gets hit by the water. This one is funny, so it doesn't count. Actually though, I already talked about how it helps relieve the tension of the preceding moments, helping keep the flow of the scene flowing. Second is this shot of the crowd cheering. I could see someone finding this distracting, but it's like a second long, and it's at a natural break point in the action. They have a little exchange, the girl gets knocked over, and they're resting for a second, and that's when they show the crowd. It's not distracting from any immediate action. Also, I personally enjoy stuff like cheering crowds to add hype to scenes like this, and I think this one is well timed after the girl gets back up from being knocked down. Third comes from when she's running at the old man, she gets knocked on the ground again, and then we see these 2 guys looking concerned. This is the most standard reaction shot, but again, it's not that long, and it comes at a natural breakpoint in the action. The girl just got knocked over, she's taking a moment to catch her breath. It almost feels like this could be where she gives up, and then it's a bit of a surprise when she jumps back to her feet and keeps up the fight. If anything, the reaction shot contributes to this feeling as it adds a little bit more rest time. Meanwhile, here are the reaction cutaways from the live action. First, there's the one after the hand-to-hand. She gets pushed for like a split second before we cut away. This cut is already awkward because we don't see the end of this movement. She's sliding, and then whoa, who's this bald kid? It would be at a natural break point if we saw the girl regain her footing, and if the next shot wasn't immediately her bending, but alas. Also, the cutaway is too long. Stuff is happening, we don't have time for this. Remember, the longest cutaway from the animated fight was the joke one. Second is during the ice wind thing, after the girl falls to the ground, we see the same 2 dudes looking concerned, and in this I'm also including this shot when she gets back up and we see those guys again looking happier. The bald kid still looks kind of worried though. This one is fine. It fulfills a similar purpose as the reaction shot after the animated girl got knocked down, putting more space into this kind of lowest moment in the fight where she almost gives up. However, I kind of think this whole segment goes on for too long, and so do the reaction shots. Next, the girl sticks this landing on another one of those ice jar things, and the bald kid looks happy. This one is at a natural break point, which is good. I think this is probably the best out of the live action cutaways. And last, the old guy is zooming on this ice ramp, and we cut away to the same 2 dudes in the crowd looking concerned. This one is bad. It's not placed at a rest point. It's distracting. I guess the idea is to show how this move is supposed to be concerning for the girl, but to me, it just makes it feel like he's moving slower than he's supposed to be, which makes it feel less impressive, actually. The old guy in the animated fight actually does a similar move, and look at how fast he goes. In conclusion, the difference in the handling of these cutaways demonstrates a better understanding of the flow of the fight, the momentum, which the animated scene keeps up and the live action scene lacks. explosion. I don't want to come off as too mean to the live action fight, though. I think this part with the girl shooting the ice discs effectively conveys the force of them with the angles and some camera shake. I also like this last part where the guy is shooting the spikes down at her and it shows them landing around her. These angles are good, and after he's won the fight, he crushes the ice underneath him. This closer up shot makes it feel pretty powerful. These examples are good, but I hope the examples I provided previously are enough to show that superior directing in the animated series is the rule, because otherwise I would just have to analyze every single shot of both scenes, and I don't want to do that. Actually, I kind of do want to do that, but I don't think anyone would want to watch a video like that. Tell me in the comments if you're interested in that, I guess. For now though, I'm kind of tired of watching these two fight scenes. As we all know, this live action is actually an adaptation of the animated version. I've made videos before about the art of adaptation, specifically what I think is important to think about when seeing something go from comic form to animated form. There's a lot of fundamental differences in conveying information to the audience when looking at the page versus motion, but not so much between animated motion and real life motion. While there are certainly differences, especially in the difficulty of recreating certain things in live action, I think broadly what makes a fight scene fun to watch in animation is very similar to that in live action. Think back to all the comparisons I made between the two fight scenes and imagine the live action using some of those same techniques as the animated one. I think you can apply a lot of those same ideas and in your head picture an action sequence that's much cooler to watch. This does not just apply to fight scenes, but all scenes. The techniques that make something fun to watch that convey feeling to the audience are found often in the animated series, but not so much in the live action. The animated series seems to know better where to place the camera and when to move it, how to frame important moments, where to place characters and objects in the viewer's vision, and how to create a cool or interesting shot. The proof of this is not found in how closely the two series follow a rulebook, though, but in how you feel while watching. The point of art is not to create a product that perfectly adheres to a set of supposedly perfect principles, but to make people feel something. I don't watch a show constantly thinking about all these camera angles and whatnot and how they produce emotion in me. That's backwards. I feel things, or the lack of things, watching these two scenes, and now all I can do is try to figure out what about the art made me feel the way I did. Art is good when you look at it and feel that it's good. I'm sure there's some people watching this who actually like the live action scene better and disagree with all my points, but I'm also sure that the majority of people watching this do agree with me, and I hope that my argument here has been able to put into words a little why one scene feels more good to you than the other. And that's like the point of art critique, I think. Finding what we think is good and why. And I feel like that's something we forget when talking specifically about adaptations. I often hear people attempt to defend adaptations by simply stating that they are supposed to be different from the original in some ways. And I'm not gonna argue against that, but I will say that the problems I have with this scene have nothing to do with it being different from the original. I have made no mention of changes to the plot or characters. I didn't even say the names of Katara, Pakku, Sokka, or Aang. I didn't need to. The scene is already bad on its own, and the fact that another version exists which is better only makes the flaws more clear, and the fact that the better version was the original and they changed it to make it worse just makes it kind of embarrassing on top of all that. People often dismiss adaptations too quickly once they detect the slightest change from their dear source material, yes, but I also think we shouldn't accept adaptations uncritically, ignoring criticism of them with the empty platitude of adaptations are meant to change things. Adaptations can make changes or they can try to be as close to the source material as they can, but they have to be good. Any debate which falls outside of that is useless. Thank you. Now go outside and make the world a better place.